Hi, Trevor here, reflecting on life through music. Thank you for stopping by. Well, come in again. You're very, very welcome. It's good to see you all back. I trust you enjoyed my last video on the Greg Kihn Band and through the song Jeopardy. Our love's in jeopardy, baby. Ooh. We would never want to hear that from our partners, right? So if we need to act before it's too late, we need to do it. So I trust you found that one encouraging. Well, going from there to a guy that was born in 1950 in Peoria, Illinois. Now, it was in around the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s period, particularly in churches, that we had music steeped in tradition. Often there was organs and hymns and all the rest of the stuff. But thanks to bands like the Beatles, who actually changed music in very many genres, everyone started thinking, hey, how can music be different? And this is what was starting to happen in churches. And so this little band started around that time, this little band called Petra. Now, Petra actually had a 33-year career. So when it comes to Christian rock, this band is right up there as pretty much trailblazing the Christian rock genre. But around those early 70 period, you know, churches think, nah, we're not going to have this. I can't have drums in churches. Don't ask me why this happens. Don't ask me why people get this way. I think we get used to a certain way of doing things, and then that's the way it always needs to be. But Bob Hartman in particular, who was at the start of Petra, said, nah, we reckon we can actually bring God to the world through rock music, and we can actually just reach more people with it. And so Petra started around 1970, and sort of at that point, you know, Bob Hartman was doing lead vocals, but he quickly realised that actually I can't really sing that well, and so they started to look out for someone else. And so let's get on to the guy that we're going to talk about today, because this guy was the mainstay frontman for this, one of the biggest Christian rock bands in the world. In fact, the biggest Christian rock band in the world for quite a few years. And this is Greg X Volz. Now, Greg X Volz has got one of the voices. His voice is absolutely stunningly amazing. He's got an incredible range, something like 4 to 5 octaves of range. We're going to get on some songs in a minute which just show that range off really, really well. Greg self-taught himself around the age 13. He started his own band, the Wombats, and he was getting to share stages with people such as Janis Joplin and Chicago. You know Chicago and Peter Cetera. We know how good his voice is. So to be asked to be involved with people like that one just goes that you're getting noticed as an individual artist. It's around 1970, at the age of 20, Greg had a massive conversion experience. And because of that, he became a born-again Christian. And from that point on, he started to sing from his convictions and from his beliefs and from his faith. And if you see this guy in action, this guy is absolutely a compelling force of nature when it comes to sharing his faith with the world. In fact, he got offered to be the lead singer of the iconic REO Speedwagon, like, you know, to be asked to be part of that band with the incredible rock image that they've got, the incredible harmonies, everything else. You know you've made it. But he said, no, I don't think I can do that one because of my faith. And so that's bit of that would have been like a real massive thing to think, hey, REO Speedwagon, right? One of the biggest bands in the world, you know, and I can really imagine Mel singing with these guys, you know, Keep On Loving You in particular song. I can sing those songs. That'd be really, really good. How could it be in a bunch of guys like these ones? We said, nah, I don't think I can do that. I need to save myself for something better. And it was around 1976 with this band, Petra, that I talked about before, that Bob Hartman came to him and said, hey, Greg, do you want to be the lead singer for Petra? And Greg went, what? Me? Petra at this point had done a lot of the hard yards as far as dealing with the criticism of the church in particular, and things were starting to get a little bit better, so they were ready to actually take the world by storm. And so Greg X Volz became the iconic frontman of Petra. And in between 1979 and 1985, there were 5 studio albums and 1 live album with Petra. Now, I actually saw the Petra guys in Adelaide. We had Louis Weaver on drums, Bob Hartman on guitar, and the major songwriter for Petra, actually, Mark Kelly on bass. The iconic John Laurie on keyboards, and of course Greg X Volz at the top on lead vocals. And so this is considered the famous 5 of Petra. I got to see these guys in Adelaide on their Beat the System tour. In fact, let's go to the clips below. So let's start off with that particular concert. I remember this date implicitly, Captured in Time and Space, 1986 live album. It was around the time that Beat the System came out, and this is the album that kind of changed Petra into a little more of a more rock pop, trying to get in with the vibe at the time. But I've got a particular live clip of one of their, I say, full-blown praise melody songs, but they crank into Hallelujah Chorus at the end, and this is absolutely stunning what's going on here. Greg X Volz has got one of the voices, he's got one of the ranges, and he's got just an all-compelling presence to him. And just listen to that last note, and how high it is, and how incredible this band was. I mean, the thing about Christian music, I think we've got to realise, particularly back in this era, we're talking about progressive rock here. So we're talking about absolute inspired, hard, pelting. Everything is absolutely in place. And, you know, Christian rock is absolutely known for its pristine, just edge and everything. And nothing typifies this better than this clip from Captured in Time and Space. I actually saw this particular number and thought, wow, what an amazing thing. So for 6 years, Greg X Volz was on the crest of the wave as far as popularity. Petra was one of the biggest bands not only in the Christian world, but the world in general. Actually, these guys were packing out stadiums when you know, Christian bands before that weren't doing that. These guys were packing out stadiums. If Petra was coming to your city, you just went to see them because they were pretty amazing. And so the pressure of being the front man of such an iconic band as this guy was starting to take its toll. They were performing every night of the week, and it was just pretty full on. And so it was around that 1985-86 period after not Back to the Street, that's the next album, but Beat the System, he kind of said, hey, Bob, Mark, Louis and John, can't do it anymore. I'm going to give you 9 months notice. I'm going to actually finish off and go off and do some other things. Because I can't do this front man anymore. Things are suffering in my personal life, and I need to just really strip it back. And so, much to the shock of the world, really, the shock of the Christian world in particular, Greg X Volz left the Petra family. But you never really leave an iconic band such as this one, as we'll discover in a minute. And so what happened then? Well, he thought, well, let's do a little bit more on my terms. Let's have a bit of a solo career, and he absolutely did that. And I've got a couple of clips from his solo career, because between 1986 and 2009, there were 17 studio albums. And it's around that 2015 area that he announced his retirement. So we got Frontline. This is from the album No Room in the Middle from 1986. There's no live version of this one, but when it comes to solo songs, this is up there as one of Greg's best, really. And this is a song I wanted to focus on a little bit more today, and that is Frontline. Everybody knows that the victory is won on the front line. So it's not the generals behind the scenes that are fighting the battles, even though they might actually be calling the shots a little bit. It's the guys at the front who win the victory. Now, obviously, when you talk about Christian rock, you've got to go a little bit deeper and try to analyse what the front line is. And the front line is a battle between good and evil. Now, if you don't think evil exists in the world, just look around you and you'll see that it does. It's insidious, it's invisible, but it's there. And certainly in the Christian world, there's an understanding that there is a battle going between good and evil. But the good thing about being on the Christian side of the world is that you have someone to protect you, someone to empower you, someone to actually give you the confidence you need when you win it. And this is what Greg X Volz certainly did experience, certainly through Petra. there would have been a lot of attacks happening with that band because they were making such a huge impact. But to actually acknowledge that, hey, Victory is one of the front line. Greg's not afraid to put himself out there, not afraid to actually stand up for what he believes and to take whatever comes. And so I think the takeaway from this today is that, you know, what do you stand up to believe in? When do you actually stand up? When does your belief require you to stand up and say, hey, this is what I think, this is what I feel, this is my convictions. And if you don't like it, well, I'm just going to try and talk to you about it. But, you know, if you don't like it, well, we can't do anything about that. We can't actually force people to be a certain way. We've just got to let people be what they are. But, you know, there is certainly battles raging between good and evil every day. And Greg X Volz well and truly had experience with that and understood what that meant. And so to be one of the biggest Christian rock band, biggest Christian rock band in the world as the front man, there was absolute attacks coming left, right and centre. And so it needs someone who can stand up and be really, really strong despite all of that to actually make a difference. And so a bit of a testimony to Greg X Volz as he looks back on his own career, particularly during Petra, him turning down of REO Speedwagon lead singer. The Victory is one on the front line. And I think often we find ourselves on the front line and we're thinking, how are we going to go here? How's this going to go? Well, if you've got the power in your life, you can do it. And this is one and truly Greg X Volz's testimony. We then got a kind of a lively version of What Then. This came off the Exodus album of 1991. This is a kind of official kind of live clip. It's good to see that there is a bit of a live version of in his solo career. There's no shortage of clips of him with Petra, but in his live career, not so many. So what then? You know, when all is come to pass, when all is there, there's nothing else. Then what then? What a great question, and that comes back to, you know, when sometimes our belief needs to stand up when we need it to, because if life becomes a bit of a challenge, it's our spiritual life that's going to get us through, the thing that gets us up in the morning. So a great question. What then? And then a great epitome of how amazing Greg X Volz's range actually is, and, you know, really his conviction, the whole thing. And to actually have your own band behind you singing some of your songs, there's nothing more empowering than that. But Petra wasn't finished with the Greg X Volz, and after 33 years, Petra decided to call it quits with their farewell tour in 2005. So the lead singer that came after Greg X Volz was John Schlitt. Of course, he was with Head East, and he sort of hit the ground running with Petra in 1986. But we go to the farewell concert, and here we've got a bit of an acoustic number, all of Petra's quieter songs, More Power to You, Road to Zion, songs like this one. And here we've got the two lead singers, Greg X Volz and John Schlitt, next to each other as they share some of Petra's most iconic slower songs. Greg's cut his hair here. He was a wild child back in the 80s, 85, which is what you needed to be back then. But he's cut his hair here. But, you know, he has not lost his voice in all these times, some 20 years after he left Petra. And it's great to see Petra bring him back a little bit later. But it would seem, well, God, let's just put it out there, God had not finished with Petra, though, because what was happening is many people were leaving the faith, leaving the religion, because, you know, life gets complicated and tricky. And so there was a bit of a call for those iconic five guys from Petra to reform. Again, Louis Weaver on drums, Mark Kelly on bass, the iconic John Laurie on keyboards, and the master songwriter Bob Hartman on lead guitar, and of course Greg X Volz up the top. And so they reformed in 2010, and there's been a few incantations since that time, because bands like Petra never really finish. They're just too important a band to kind of have an end point. And so we've got the Classic Petra lineup with Adonai. It's a pretty amazing song, very hard rock edge, this one. Incredible harmonies going on as well. Just a full-blown Petra at the very best right here. And the stage, interestingly, is the stage that was used in the Catcher in Time and Stace concert. So it's good to see that stage back as well. So, as I said, Petra have been trailblazers. They were inducted into the Christian Music Hall of Fame in 2007, Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2000, Hard Rock Cafe in 1994. Petra have received 4 Grammy Awards and 10 Dove Awards, and so very, very significant band in the scheme of things. Not just from the fact that they pushed Christian music into hard rock, but also the fact that these guys were pristine performers, pristine songwriting, just pristine everything, and they showed you how it should be done on stage. I know we'll spend a little bit more time on Petra a little bit later, but it's good to look at Greg X Volz in particular and his iconic voice that this got, his iconic stage presence, his iconic beliefs and just everything. So again, the encouragement of this video today is what do you believe in and what do you do when you need to stand up and talk about it? Because, you know, belief isn't anything if we can't stand up for what we believe. So I trust you've all found that an encouragement for today. Well, if this is your first time to Life Reflections through Music, or you've come back for another one, thank you for everyone for doing so. I've looked at this iconic frontman today. I trust you're all going well, and that's it for today. Next time we're going to go on to the band Grinspoon. You know, we go into all sorts of genres here. So until then, I'll catch you around. Bye for now.